helicopter crash survivalist and longtime Indianapolis 500 legacy, Paul Page. If you could describe your dinner with racers that we just had in one word, what would it be?
Whoa! I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, no, he's good at this.
Yeah, all right.
And now for Dinner with Racers, presented by
Continental Tire.
with your hosts, Ryan Eversley and Sean Heckman.
Placeholder radio sound. I'm a driver. I'm very angry. This is the sound of a driver on the radio during a race.
What do you think I should order?
Welcome to Dinner with Racers. I'm Ryan Eversley,
And I'm Sean Heckman.
and we are currently driving from Indianapolis back to Atlanta, where we spent 7 days getting 10 meals with notable people in motorsports. And traditionally, we would do a 30-day trip and gather about 30 episodes together. But what we've decided to do is change it up a little bit so we can get you more content throughout the year. So we're going to do shorter trips to bring you episodes periodically. And in theory, this should stop us from killing each other?
I believe it's murder.
Murder, right.
Yeah,
okay,
full,
cool.
complete murder.
So-
first degree murder.
Now, this episode was none other than IndyCar longtime commentator Paul Page.
Paul Page.
If you're a fan of IndyCar racing in the U.S., you've definitely heard Paul's voice calling multiple Indianapolis 500s. If you've been to the Speedway, you've heard him calling the race there as well. And he started out as a young man around the Speedway, working under none other than Sid Collins, who was the voice of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for a while. And we were really fortunate to listen to some of the cool stories that Paul had to tell us.
Now, for Ryan and I, this was sort of a unique treat because as fans of the Indianapolis 500 and IndyCar racing in general, we grew up to the sound of Paul Page as we watched. So the chance to sort of just have dinner with the legend was something we'll never get. And we heard some really, really cool stories along the way. One of the highlights was, of course, hearing about his take on the military documentary starring Chuck Norris, known as Delta Force.
We also learned about crashing a helicopter.
We learn about the magic of the Nathan's hot dog eating contest.
Being a student of the sport under the very well-known Sid Collins.
And, of course, we learn how he wrote, directed, and produced the movie Driven.
And didn't get any credit for it.
Also, he did not write, produce, or direct the movie Driven.
But he did give us a lot of insight on how much worse that movie really was, and we think you guys are going to love that.
So we went to the boutique city of Broad Ripple, Indiana, just north of Indianapolis.
This time we went to the Union Jack Pub, which is I think it's a local chain up there, and they are apparently known for their pizza, which we did not know until afterwards, which was a bummer. I had the Cuban sandwich.
And I had the chicken sandwich.
Interesting.
Yes, I did.
Of course, none of this is possible without the support of our partners, like Acura, with my lovely Acura MDX.
And, of course, we couldn't have gotten there safely and efficiently without the best tire in the business.
Which is?
Well, that's Continental Tire.
Of course.
That's a Continental Tire.
That's a what?
Continental Tire.
Give me a good one, though. Come on.
Oh, yeah, Continental Tire.
Continental Tire.
Continental Tire.
Continental Tire.
Continental Tire.
Continental Tire.
Paul Page.
All right, we're going to start in 5, 4, 3, 2.
How long do you normally do this? I mean,
So traditionally, the first year we did a 24-day road trip because it did it in the off season. As soon as the season ended, we kind of ran around the country and got a lot of people. And then we didn't know if anybody listened to it or if it'd be successful or what. It was kind of like, if it's good, it's good. If not, we tried. And it was really well received. And
Great.
so then we did season 2, which I think was 28 days across the country. And again, and that's like, nonstop or every day. It's like, okay, like we would finish this dinner and we would drive as far as we could to the next town or whatever. And
it sounds like my early days when I was a Formula Ford guy.
right.
Yeah.
Because we heard from Paul Fanner that you guys kind of did the same thing back in the day. We
he actually had exactly the same car I had, an Eldon Mark 10.
Yeah. Did you have Mike Cole help coach you as well?
No.
Yeah, I guess he had Mike Cole coach him in the famous one-liner.
Well, Mike, I know Mike from when he was building ADFs.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
Because I one year got to drive an ADF at Road America, and it was like the super trick double throwdown Formula Ford of all time.
Right.
Inboard brakes, and I mean, just it was awesome.
Yeah.
And it was slick. But I was driving that, and maybe you want to wait for later to talk. Are we?
Oh, we're going.
We're going.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take that out. Yeah, so I'd borrowed this ADF because I really wanted to drive one, and I like my Eldon Mark 10. But in Road America at that time, the Formula Ford field would be like 80 cars.
Okay.
Right.
And so big, in fact, that if we were like a mid-pack or maybe even not quite mid-pack, you'd be kind of down the hill. You've obviously driven it.
Yes.
You'd be down the hill, and there was a bridge over. And what we would do, since the rule was green to the front row is green to the field, we'd get somebody up on the bridge because we didn't have radios.
Oh, right, to kind
or
of
anything.
relay
Yeah.
Waving this little orange disc
Yeah.
to let us know. And I was alongside B.J. Swanson, who was one hell of a driver and unfortunately was killed in a Formula 5000 car at Mid-Ohio. But he was incredible. And he darted out to the left, and so I just darted with him, and we went flying past all these guys who didn't realize it was green yet.
Right.
But it also kind of created for a bottleneck down
Yep,
turn
sure,
one.
yep.
Well, so race rolls on, and he's way up ahead of me. And suddenly I come around a corner, and he is sitting off the corner against the guardrail, pulling pieces off his car, which I think was a Lola.
Yeah.
And pulling them off, and about 3 laps later, here he came. Now, I'm in the double throwdown trickest car in the history of the planet,
Right.
and he's basically in a go-kart.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got no fiberglass on the damn thing at all. Zoom! Right on past
Still
me.
on it.
One of the many things that convinced me I was not a race driver.
Sure. So I guess taking it back to the beginnings, you were born in Evansville, Indiana,
I am.
and you were an Army brat.
I was, yeah.
Now we heard the phrase "mill brat." Is that
mill
that
brat.
a common
We're
phrase?
mill
I never
brats.
heard that.
Yeah, that's I don't know how it became that, but
Yeah.
it became that. So
we
that's
might,
what we are.
We
We're
might
mill
steal
brats.
that phrase from you, because we have a running joke on the show about going back to the mill, as in like, a cotton mill or something, because
Cool.
Ralph Earnhardt used to threaten Dale with that. If you don't start winning, you're going back to the mill. Our fans thought that was hilarious.
Right.
Now we could call them mill brats.
Mill brats, exactly.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Excellent.
okay. So
You can call me that outright. Yeah, I was shortly after I was born, my father passed away, so I never really knew him.
Okay.
And my mom, we moved to Indianapolis and lived with a great uncle who happened to be an American League Baseball umpire.
Oh, wow.
And one of the senior guys, I mean, he umpired when Ruth and all those guys were playing.
Okay.
He actually retired in '46, so he had 4 World Series and 3 All-Star games. But he was my father figure and raised me during the early years. And then Mom apparently liked uniforms and married an Army officer this time rather than a Navy officer. And right away we're off to Stuttgart, Germany.
Yeah.
And so we lived in occupied housing, not on the base.
Yeah.
But,
Right.
And so here I am in like the, Mercedes and Porsche and all that.
Yeah.
But I'm 8 years old.
Yeah.
Right.
Still kind of figured it out, except somebody took me to a Formula One race at the Nürburgring.
Very cool.
And I'm like, this is it. This is it forever. And so then I got kind of interested in where they were building the stuff, though mostly it was a drive-by on the street and wave at it because they didn't really have a system where they let fans come
tour
rolling in.
Right.
And so when we came back to the United States, which was in '54, we came back here for a while, and then we started bouncing everywhere.
Right.
We came back here because my dad got assigned to Korea for a short while, and then to Fort Belvoir, Virginia, on and on and on.
Over. Yep.
And I guess the whole point of this menagerie that I'm running through here is that 12 years of school, I went to 12 different schools.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And when I'm like 15, my family, we're living now at Fort Sheridan, Illinois, which is Highland Park on the North Shore of Chicago, tells me that my family here, my great uncle, wants me to come down and see the Indianapolis 500.
And by this point, you're already kind of a race fan.
Well,
just
There's the trick.
Okay.
I'd seen Formula One.
Copy.
So I'm like an F1 guy, and I even said something to the effect, I don't want to see a bunch of guys turn left. Come on.
Oh, so even then it was like
I was
that.
a Formula One snob,
yeah.
Man, so you would have been that guy on Facebook.
Or racer forums.
Yeah, just like, no.
And it's like, you're going.
Right.
Okay. So I went and had seats. He had seats down in the first turn, and you could see right down the main straightaway and across the short chute. I mean, they're awesome seats. And I was hooked on the Indy 500 before a car even rolled a wheel.
Oh, yeah.
Just the pomp, and
Excitement.
circumstance,
Yeah,
and the
buzz.
ceremonies. And I'm like, and then that happened to be the 60, the Rathman-Ward duel,
Oh,
which was
awesome.
back
Yeah.
and forth in every corner, and the roadsters where the guys are sitting up with the big wheel, and you
Yeah.
can see them fighting it. So, yeah, I was hooked. And when I left there, I said, some way I'm going to be part of that.
Yeah.
Some way I'm going to be part of that.
Yeah.
And tried to see if I was a race driver at one point, hence Formula Ford. I was not a race driver. I was fast. I mean, I was a national license driver, FIA guy.
Yeah.
But I was not going
You knew
to
your
be
calling
a
wasn't
professional
there. Yeah,
ever. So
right.
the good news was I got essentially the job I have now in '77, and didn't have weekends anyway.
Sure.
Didn't have race
Yeah.
weekends. So
Yeah.
I claim it's that. I retired.
That's why.
because
Yeah.
I had this other job.
I got to get to work, guys. So, you served in the military as well?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did you do?
I was in the U.S. Army infantry guy. Joined in '65 and got out in late '70.
Yeah. How, did you have to go anywhere or?
Lots of places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any fond memories of that?
There are no fond memories. Yeah, actually, I'll tell you this. I've been away from it long enough that I actually think I had fun at basic training.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah,
So it's been a while.
But yeah.
So how do you make the transition from failed race car driver to pro commentator? I believe you're doing journalism or working at
Well,
news
yeah,
station?
I was, my first ambition in Indianapolis was to get a job as a disc jockey.
Okay.
Okay.
And I got one as a disc jockey, and like 3 weeks later, the station went on automation.
Okay.
So I'm casting around, and I went up to WIBC, at which I had no chance because it was the number one 50,000-watt powerhouse, big deal radio station, and they needed somebody in the news department.
Okay.
This was especially important to me, though, because Sid Collins, the voice of the 500, worked there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
even at this point, you're angling. You want to.
Not really. Really, at that time, I just needed a job.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was serendipitous that Sid was there.
Yeah.
Right.
And I did that job and as an on-the-street news reporter, which helped me immensely in what I do now.
Okay.
Because I had to describe, radio then, we were out on the street, we were popping live all the time,
Right.
we were covering fires and, whatever.
Right.
And then they gave me a job in a helicopter doing traffic, which was fascinating because in that day, Indianapolis didn't have any traffic.
Sure. Right.
My job was to be the straight man for the morning and afternoon drive disc jockeys.
Okay.
And we had a
Okay.
ball.
Yeah.
I talk about I'm out on the porch, and when we take the side doors off the helicopter, the noise would change. And they go, what's going on up there? I'm on the porch.
Cars are passing
Stuff
by.
like that. We had a good time. But in the midst of all this, I'm also trying my best to learn as much about auto racing, and to that end, I took a job, a part-time evening job with George Bignotti, who had at that time Gordon Johncock
Yeah.
and Wally Dallenbach.
Yeah.
Right.
And I became the radio guy, so he started traveling me on the circuit. I was like, oh,
Nice.
this is
This is
total
it.
heaven.
You made it.
I'm
Yeah,
in
right.
it now. And at the same time, Sid started to take note of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a particular coverage. It was actually when President Nixon's daughter came to the IU Med Center for an operation, and she was brought in, or he was brought in on Air Force One. And I was the guy assigned out at the airport to, cover the landing and takeoff.
Okay.
And so I did that. And I got back to the station, and Sid said, "Come here." And I'm thinking, oh, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said, that was really, really well done. And he talked to me a little bit about the descriptions and all that. And then it went away. But he was always in at the end. I worked the late shift, so 2 to 10. So he was always there when I was there, because he was the sports director at WIBC and would come in at 6 and do a lengthy sportscast.
And just to set up the context, Sid Collins, for those who don't know, was
Everybody
the voice.
knows.
Well, we have a lot of kids.
We have a lot of kids.
that might not.
He
Yeah,
was
yeah.
the voice of Indianapolis Motor Speedway for
Exactly.
2-3 decades.
For 25 years.
25
Yeah.
years, early 50s to late 70s. He's the guy who coined the phrase, the pinnacle of motorsports.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the world's greatest race course.
Yeah.
There you go.
He did not, though, do the station cue, stay tuned for the greatest spectacle in racing. That was actually done by somebody in the traffic department at WIBC. They were
interesting.
the first year they didn't have a cue.
Right. Sure.
And the next year, we need to tell the stations when we're doing something.
Right.
So they came up with that, and of course that became infamous.
Right.
Not
Sure.
infamous, but
Legend has it, while working as a helicopter traffic reporter, you were in a crash?
oh yeah, that legend's true.
Okay.
Yeah, I was actually. It was after I did my first Indy 500 as a pit reporter on the radio network
Okay.
in 1974.
Right.
Nice.
And then I was totally mentored by Sid Collins by that time. He was preparing me to take over for him, and he was going to retire in the ensuing year. And his intent was to start the show, introduce me, and move on. He already had me coming into the booth to do like qualifying stuff and everything. And you got to understand in the context, you guys do, but again, everybody else, that was by far the world's largest radio network. Over 13,000 stations.
Wow.
Global,
Yeah.
shortwave,
Yeah.
American Forces radio. It was heard everywhere.
Yeah.
So in 1977, Sid passed away at beginning of the month of May, and I took over doing the radio at that time.
Right.
So
How did you crash?
Yeah, what's the...
the crash, yeah.
How did that
I'm
happen?
leading up to that. I'm trying to think of a good way to... The
We can edit.
later that year, that's not a full-time job.
Oh, okay.
So I was still doing the helicopter.
I got you.
And later that year, December 1st, 1977, you remember
Those
some
dates
dates.
stick with you.
We were actually flying westbound and just coming up on the speedway,
Right.
heading for the airport, when we hear this really loud crack.
Yeah.
And I look over at the pilot, and he kind of looks at me, and we had a photographer sitting between us who was taking still photos on this particular ride. And we'd never heard that before. Okay, we're going to the airport anyway.
Right.
So
Typical guys.
A few seconds later, there's a second crack, and I realize we're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And we're starting down. And since I rode in the thing so long, I had a inkling of what had to be done. We had to auto rotate, and I knew that you had to keep 50 knots frontal.
Okay.
And I look over at the airspeed, and we're passing through 80.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the pilot now, and this is all happening, obviously, in
split
microseconds.
second.
Yes.
I'm now checking the pilot out, and he's thrashing everything. And I realize, looking at him, that just beyond him, I can see the tip of the rotor blade. The rotor had stopped.
Oh,
So now you got no auto rotation.
right.
Yeah.
And we hit, the tail rotor disintegrated in flight and ended up in the North 40 of the Speedway.
Jeez.
Oh, wow.
And the helicopter, we continued on west and crashed on the football field of Speedway High School,
Right.
which I maintain is the biggest touchdown that school ever had.
He's got jokes for the helicopter crash.
And and it was a pretty bad injury. It about took my left foot off and everything, but I had a great team of doctors. But I was thinking afterwards. I wasn't unconscious. I'm amnesic to the crash.
Okay.
But I know it's amnesic because I can remember going past a light standard, and then the next thing I know is I'm on the ground,
Right.
and there are parts still bouncing around.
Yeah.
And now I'm laying on the ground underneath the main rotor, and there is avgas.
Yeah.
pouring
Good,
on
good,
me.
yeah,
So
it's a healthy
it's
sign.
exciting moment.
Yeah.
How'd the other guys fare?
One, the photographer had a spiral fracture, kind of a ripple fracture down his spine. And the pilot had the same, and some small break to his leg. I was actually in terms of trauma, the worst injured, because when I'm in the ambulance and I'm saying, it's hot in here. And it says, well, why is it hot? You turn the temperature down. Well, it's hot because you're going into shock.
Yeah, right.
Okay, what am I going into shock from? Because I was also involved in emergency paramedics in that day.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they pull back the drape and I can see my tibia.
Ooh.
And my foot's up alongside my knee.
Okay.
So I'm like,
Oh,
where are the drugs? So, but that also is now after I've gotten that job.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking in the ambulance, I really only get that one shot at it.
Right, at the 500.
Because
Yeah.
the Indy 500 does something to you. As a once-a-year thing, and such a significant once-a-year thing, everyone becomes so important. Just like a race driver who's going through his month trying desperately not to make mistakes, to keep on schedule, to keep his brain right. And then after the race, he goes back and like, oh man, that one corner here, if I hadn't done this, or
That's how we are with this podcast.
Same thing is true for me, because I know any mistake that I make in that broadcast, I can't really correct until the following year.
Yeah.
And so doing one and knowing that I personally, there was stuff in it that I really wish I hadn't done.
Sure. Rookie mistakes.
But I obviously survived, and I got my chance.
You made up for it.
We're done.
Yeah, it worked out.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, wow. Yeah.
So your first gig was as a pit reporter at the Speedway. So this is kind of like, was it moonlighting or just kind of two different things? When you were first working at the Speedway with pit reporting?
No, I started doing track reports for WIBC and then another station, because I left IBC for a while, WIFE. And so that got me to Speedway every day. And that's when the old garage area was there, and it was just so cool.
Yeah.
I go out and get a few interviews, bring it back to the station. But then when Sid brought me on board in 1974, the pits had been expanded after 73 in that terrible series of accidents.
Yeah.
And so he reasoned that since they were much longer, they needed another pit reporter. So I became that guy.
Sure.
And that was the day when the pit wall was like 21 inches high, meaning the wall between the pit box and the race car.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Wow.
And they had no pit speed limits.
Yeah, right.
So I'm in the north end, and guys are buzzing through there at 160 miles an hour.
Yeah, right.
And I'm thinking, I got to get out of here. So I did that for 74, 75, and 76.
Yeah.
Wow.
Do you remember the first time you met Sid?
Yeah, I do, because I was scared to death of him.
Right.
Yeah.
I was in the hallway at the WIBC studios, and he came out from doing his sportscast, and this was in the evening, and I saw him in the hall, and he said, "I'm Sid Collins," and reached his hand out, and I shook his hand, and I'm because, and you made the point, Sid Collins, when he created the Indianapolis Motor Speedway radio network, which until 1986 was the sole live coverage of the Indy 500.
Yeah, and we were going to ask about that, but I'll let you finish.
Okay, but the key here is in 1952, when they really started doing it, there was no flag-to-flag coverage prior to that.
Yeah.
There was cut-ins on mutual. Sid put together something that truly couldn't be done, because everything was being done on copper wire. I mean, we're all vacuum tubes.
Yeah.
The network itself, no satellite, so every time you hang another station on, you got to call AT&T long lines, and they're routing. Well, this one's going through Syracuse, and coming back to Kansas City, and that kind of thing.
Right.
And he also had to have the personnel to do it, the engineering support, and he made WIBC, where he worked the flagship, but then he went out to all the other stations and said, "Give me your people, announcers," and so it became a collaborative effort. And they got the race on the air, and it was astonishing. When you look back on it, if you study the business,
just the ability to network
it really,
yeah.
I mean, it was phenomenal that he pulled that one off.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because before that, they would do a 5-minute rundown every hour of the races going on for the new.
And it was on mutual, and and I think Bill Slater got sick one year, and Sid got to do kind of the anchor on some of those reports, and so it went on from that.
But to your point, so pre-86, it was sort of part of, like people who live in Indianapolis are familiar even today with the idea of a blackout. But pre-1986, even though live television was nothing new, there was no live coverage of the Indy 500.
It was covered in the evening by ABC.
Exactly, and it was sort of part of the wide world of sports packaging that they would do the next weekend. We haven't really had like a proper historian talk about the history of the 500 and that sort of thing. The fear, as I always understood it, was that live coverage would mean people wouldn't come to the race.
That was their theory.
Right.
I think it was a bogus theory.
Well, it was proven otherwise. Right, exactly. So literally, like somebody like me growing up in San Francisco or LA could not watch the Indy 500 live, even though there were plenty of other sporting events that were. Right. So, and you were the very first.
No, I wasn't the first live. They did their first live in '86. ABC did.
Okay.
And
you were on the radio still.
I think Lampley did that one, and I think he did '87.
Okay.
And ABC then called both the Speedway and me and said, we'd like you to come do our motorsports at ABC for us. And so, obviously, I got the Speedway's permission. And their answer was, I think we do need someone who's a little more conversant in the sport calling the race.
In other words, so to put that into modern context, this was somebody who was maybe a standard kind of play-by-play guy for all sports, but motorsports being so unique, maybe he couldn't follow it as well.
Motorsports always needs a specialist
really
in motorsports to actually call it.
Exactly.
So there it was. They wanted me to come live, and I did it. And it was a fun first year in that we came in and I worked very closely with the production staff and the producers. And we changed everything about the way the race was covered. They had 2 complete remote units, one to cover the race and the other to cover the pits and the brakes, the bumps to brake, the beauty shot things and stuff. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Because I'd had some other television experience by then. Because in 1983 I had joined NBC Sports and NBC Sports World. So I'd been working for a network prior to that. And, I mean, everybody was receptive. We really put a team together, and it was a great race. It was a great day, and we won an Emmy for the Best Sports Special. And we're like, wow. Because the Emmys never recognized motorsports.
Sure.
I mean, it's all stick and ball.
Yeah.
The next year we won it again, same thing. And to my knowledge, the only other thing to ever do that was back-to-back World Series with the New York Yankees.
Oh, right.
So
that's awesome.
But it was fun and totally different to do television.
Sure.
Right. So also during this time, so late 80s, you kind of take over, and obviously you had a very creative hand. Concurrently, there was a movie out, documentary as we like to call it, by Chuck Norris, called Delta Force.
Uh-huh.
Was this a movie that was that you were just fond of, or we'll get to the whole how this applies to you, but where did you love the movie? Where does Delta Force come into play?
You're talking the cult now.
Here we go. This is the legend of Paul Page.
In 1987, and I think in 88.
Yeah.
A guy named Ben Harvey was the producer who was going to produce the tease, the opening of the Indy 500
broadcast.
And he did it totally on his own concept.
Okay.
And
was he a guy that couldn't be told otherwise?
No.
A creative, like, no, this is my vision?
Yeah, exactly.
He wasn't
exactly.
that guy?
And that were the days when, associate producers, directors, real producers all had a lot of power.
Yeah.
But in that, he stuck in a little of Delta Force.
Yes.
And he wrote the script, so I just read his script.
For those who were born in the 90s, which is possible these days, Delta Force was like a action army movie.
Yeah.
Kind of starring Chuck Norris.
Shoot 'em up army movie.
Typical Chuck Norris military thing.
And like a staple. If you watch the movies, the cost, everything about that is a staple of the mid-'80s. But anyway, I'll let you continue.
Well, I didn't know where it came from. I just liked it.
Okay.
And so the next year, a guy named Don Ohlmeyer came to join us, who was my coordinating producer at NBC. But he was an awesome auto racing director. And so he came over and directed the Indy 500. And he said, we got to come up with better teases. And
Right.
What do you think we ought to do?
Gotta
I
get
said, well,
people
I
excited.
like this music. I don't think I'd seen the movie. I just like the music.
Okay.
All right. It's a kind of even better.
So Don's technique was to take all of the best video that he had, all the best shots that he had. And we have one of the trucks on site was a semi with just jammed with videotapes of all the historic
you did this all on
stuff in
Adobe
Indy.
Premiere, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no. It was all done on 1 inch.
One crazy reel to reel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So he did that, and we did it in the trucks. On Monday before the race, he sat down in the trucks, in his truck, and started putting this all together. And I'd stick my head in every now and then and say, come on,
And you've
hurry
got
up.
hundreds of tapes, and you got it like you're literally duplicating this frame to the next tape and so on and so forth to make this work.
Because you not having Adobe or anything like that, you backing up a tape, finding the shot,
This
putting
frame
it
to
in,
this
tacking
frame.
it, and then and then nonlinear editing.
Yeah,
saved
kind of
it
screwed
all.
the whole world. Yeah.
But so on Wednesday, he wandered into the truck, the office, and he said, I got it. Come on over. And so I came over and I viewed it, and he says, okay, write it. And so I looked at it.
Interesting. So he builds the
15 or
B-roll
20 times.
package, and you've got to come up with a copy over
His argument being, and I think it's perfectly valid, television is a visual medium. You lead with the video.
Yeah.
And so I sat down, and it was a day and a half of just doing nothing but that, figuring that one out. And then on Friday we voiced it over, and it's funny, we had a little voiceover booth with that foam-like stuff, but it was only about 3 feet square.
Right.
Okay.
And a little TV monitor to watch what you're talking about. And even one year when we had somebody doing something in there and I had to get something done, we used Studio C, which was a car.
Oh. Okay.
And the acoustics are perfect in a car.
Sure. Yeah.
So, anyhow, so I wrote it and I really liked it. And Don really liked it, but we kept it secret until the production meeting on Saturday when the entire staff is in now. And so we said, here's how we're going to open. What do you think?
Yeah.
And everybody was like, oh, it's terrific.
Right. Yeah.
And so next year, Don comes up and said, yeah, that worked out. Let's do that again.
Yeah.
Nice.
And
To the music of Delta Force.
yeah.
Awesome.
Always Delta Force
Oh,
after
God.
that.
We
bless
watched it earlier. We watched a couple
of
earlier on
them, yeah.
YouTube, and it's like that was the song I
It
attributed
literally
to
wasn't
the
until
Indy
later
500.
in life that I realized that was a movie. Because
Right.
to me, that's always been the ABC
Yeah,
Open.
it was-
So,
yeah.
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
still
so-
good. They should do one now like that
Yeah.
as a complete throwback. Do an entry opening.
I have been arguing that.
I want my
And-
license fees.
You're right.
I don't know. They're going to surprise me. I'm going to do something because this is the 54th year.
Okay.
And the last year for ABC.
Right.
So I'm going to do something in the ABC telecast.
how cool.
great.
That's
Okay.
kind of ABC history
Yeah.
stuff.
You know and
And-
you're not telling us, or you don't know yet?
I'm sorry?
You know what you're doing and you're not telling us, or you don't know yet what you're going to be doing?
No, I don't know yet.
Oh, okay.
I don't know
Okay.
yet. They'll get this weekend done, and then they'll probably start to think about it.
Yeah.
If it's not your voice over a Delta Force intro,
Well,
I
I
will lose
really
my mind.
appreciate
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I do
We'd be
appreciate
pretty
it.
upset. I'd like to talk about Sid Collins a little more because I think the younger generation would appreciate what he meant to the Speedway, but also your story with him because it was very emotionally, built out of the whole thing. You guys are very close, it seems like, and then it ended, for the reasons it did. And I didn't know the backstory on a lot of that. And if you're comfortable talking with it,
Yeah,
I'd like to
no,
I'd
I
like to
don't
discuss
mind.
it.
Though it is pretty sensitive.
Yeah,
to me.
yeah,
It's
but-
still to this day, it's a little raw.
But by reading some of your interviews, I was like, okay, I know this is going to be a personal thing, but I think it's an important story to tell.
Like I say, he became a mentor.
Yeah.
He was single, and he was a very, very dignified man, and always turned out nattily. And I mean, he was very concerned about always being the image that he thought the voice of the 500 ought to be, because he also viewed himself as a global ambassador of motorsports.
Sure.
So he conducted his life in that way. And once he started really mentoring me, we spent a lot of time together. I remember one day I'd been sent out to the Soapbox Derby Hill, the Wilbur Shaw Soapbox Derby Hill, and I was supposed to do a story, interview the winner. So I interviewed the winner, Gal. And she was really sweet, really good, and was so excited about winning so much.
Yeah.
So I did the interview, and I come back, and I walk into the station, and Sid's literally standing in the hallway, arms crossed, looking at me, and says, "That is the worst interview I have ever heard." And then he proceeded to take it apart.
Yeah.
And then build me back. All right, here's how you do an interview. And it was a postgraduate degree all the way through. And what you had to understand with Sid, while he loved motorsports and everything, he was a total student, really a doctorate,
Right.
in how radio broadcasting should be done. And because of that, he was able to bring all that to this great network, and was able to bring me along with it. So we became extraordinarily close friends. We were more often than not having dinner together. And then Sid started having problems walking in 1975, really. And he was treated at that time as if it was an orthopedic issue. But I kind of knew something, again, the paramedic connection. I knew all the docs.
Yeah.
And it wasn't orthopedic. But absolutely, the docs that's treating him, they don't want to tell him that he has amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS.
Right.
And because him living alone, no family, the only girl I think he ever really cared about in his life had gone off and gotten married on him because he was hesitant. And so he had no real family support.
Yeah.
He had only the Indy 500. And that year, because he was having trouble walking, a couple of guys got together and bought a golf cart.
Okay.
Had Sid Collins, voice the 500, put on it and everything. Brought it out to the track and presented it to him in a public ceremony. He was gracious, and then when they were away from everybody, he said, "Get that thing out of here. I don't ever want to see it again." Because he didn't want people to know that he had any kind of infirmity.
Right.
He would refuse to use a cane, for example.
Because in his mind, it would take away from sort of the dignified.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
Exactly what it would do. In fact, in '76, in prepping one of the broadcasts, I want to say it was a qualifying broadcast, but I went up to the booth, which was in the old control tower, and Sid was sitting there in the booth, and this is like 5 hours before the broadcast even being thought of. And I said, "What are you doing in here?" I said, "I didn't want to see anybody watch me go up the stairs."
Right.
So he came up 5 hours early just to
Yeah.
keep that image. Well, the next year, '77, it kept getting worse. And now several of us, there were like 3 of us that were kind of all the time involved with Sid. One guy was a guy named Ray Trotta, who ran Sid's restaurant, which didn't last that long, and also was the manager of the Ayers Tea Room, which is very famous here, so much so in Indianapolis there. It doesn't exist anymore, but there's a replica of it in the Indiana State Museum.
Oh, that's neat.
And his attorney, a guy named Henry Bradshaw, and we were like, we don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Finally, we're talking to his
And
neurologist.
was this public? I mean, did everyone in the area know?
No,
He was
hiding it.
Very
He
small
was hiding
group,
it very effectively.
Yeah.
And so we started talking to his neurologist, who says, "Look, he's got ALS, but we're scared to death to tell him. So we just got to kind of play along with this, because without any support, we don't know what to do." Well, in April of that year, '77, Sid, on his own, typical Sid, borrowed a private jet.
Oh, like you do. Like you do.
And went to the Mayo Clinic. Well, they didn't know Sid Collins from Adam.
Yeah.
So they treated him like any other patient. They sat him down after all the tests. He said, "You got ALS, so you probably have a year or so to live." Of course, that was. And so he gets back, and he immediately starts talking about suicide. So
To just you, or
to the 3 of us,
Okay.
but primarily to me.
yeah.
And nobody else still knows
Does
anything
any
about
of
that.
this, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
And so we call a psychiatrist, and we get him committed, but he signed himself right back out. This is in April. And we start talking to psychiatrists. What are we going to do? How are we going to help this guy? And I said, look, if suicides want to do it, they do it. It could be a cry for help. It could be real. But given the nature of his illness, so what do we do? I mean, he's talking about putting his car in the garage and letting the engine run. He said, if they bring that up to you, just discuss that with him. If he says, I'm going to shoot myself, say, wow, that's going to be ugly. You don't want to be found ugly. That kind of thing. It was
these kind of weird reverse
horrible
psychology.
time.
Yeah,
it was a monstrous time.
Sure.
So the attorney and I, he lived in an apartment on the east side, and the attorney and I, the attorney primarily, had convinced him that he should move to an assisted care. He could still do all of his things, but he would get the help that he needed. And we went over to his house the day before the radio network first production meeting and breakfast was to happen, to pick him up. And when we got there, the door was unlocked, and we walked in, and the cane that he had been using privately was hanging on the banister. And we're like, oh my God. So we start yelling for him. Henry runs upstairs, and he finds Sid had hung himself in his closet. To this moment, it just still brings lumps. This incredible man suffering so much. And then, of course, it's going through your mind, too. Well, did he really have to? How close was he? And there are some treatments. But the end result of that is the one thing he had done a number of weeks before. We started talking to the radio network about should anything happen, and he kind of couched it, should I not be able to get up to the booth or something. Paul's the understudy and has been for a couple of years. So the next morning I have to go to this breakfast production meeting.
I mean, like 12 hours later.
Yeah, I'm the guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we launch right into coverage. I mean, it was 1st of May.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
A month. Right.
So it was a horrible time.
Yeah.
And we lost an incredible human being in doing it.
And he left behind a tape that
He did. He gave it to me, and he said, I want you to play this on the air on the pre-race. And I listened to it. First of all, it was 27 minutes long, so I was never going to get on.
Right.
And it was a chronology of everything that happened to him.
Okay. And so this was sort of his equivalent of a note.
Yeah, and it's a justification that what
Okay.
he did was not inappropriate. Obviously, we didn't play it.
Sure.
In fact, I turned it over to the coroner just as part of their investigation.
Yeah, sure. Did you listen to the whole
I
thing?
have it now, and it's never going to see the light of day. I won't destroy it. Maybe another generation or so, maybe that ought to come out.
Yeah.
But it's pretty sad.
Yeah, I read something that you basically, to anybody that would question his strength or courage, you argued that like there's no questioning his
No.
strength and courage.
No, absolutely
Yeah.
not. And the post-mortem examination told us that he would have been dead within 3 months.
Geez, so way
Wow,
worse.
so
than
So
it
it
was
wasn't
very
a
far
year
along.
or two
So the
thing.
pain he must have been going through would have been off
would
the
have been
charts.
horrible.
Yeah.
It would have been just horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
We talked a bit about this with Hurley Haywood and the loss of his friend Peter Gregg. You know, the thing that Hurley always struggled with was the warning signs and what should he have noticed or should. In your case, there weren't warning signs. I mean, he flat out said that he's been given it. I mean, at a certain point, you can't do anything. It's
Right,
going to happen
exactly.
or it's not. So
Clearly
I assume
what
in
the
your case-
psychiatrist said.
Yeah.
If they're going to do it, and they mean it, they're going to do it.
Right.
And you're not. And the other thing was interesting, in a maudlin kind of way, was he talked to us about all these different methods of suicide. The way he killed himself, he had never discussed. I mean, he literally hung himself from the bar in his closet. He had to kneel down to do that.
Right. So in your tip for you, there's never been any what ifs or should I have? I mean, it seems like it's pretty.
No.
Yeah.
We did it as best we could.
Sure.
We tried to save him. He was not going to save
Yeah,
himself.
understood.
How are you with your stepdad, relationship wise?
He's passed away.
No. As a child, I mean, what I'm getting at is that obviously Sid was a mentor, and the age difference was enough that he could have been helpful as like a.
Well, my stepdad never really took a very big interest in me.
Okay.
I was kind of the baggage that came along, which was okay with me.
Yeah.
It was a fact of life.
Right.
But in coming back to Indianapolis, that uncle, the umpire I talked to, actually my great uncle, was a tremendous influence on me. And they'd made an arrangement, since I'd essentially bonded with him when I was like 2, that I could come back to Indianapolis in the summers and stay here for the summer. A couple of years that didn't work out, but that was my father figure. And then as I'm becoming an adult, Sid became that figure.
Right,
Absolutely. There's
right.
no question about that.
Yeah. So you go to the first Indianapolis that you call yourself, and it's a big weekend.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot of historic things happen. That's
Yeah. Janet Guthrie coming in there. And
Yeah.
my drinking buddy.
Yeah.
We had Janet
We had her
on
a couple years
2
ago.
years ago.
2 years ago.
Or up in
Yeah.
Aspen?
Yeah, I went to Aspen.
Yeah.
Oh, nice
yeah,
work.
and she
she was
we were
awesome.
like,
Yeah.
she was special. That weekend was a big deal. It was her debut. They changed the command from gentlemen to drivers.
And that was the greatest mystery.
Yeah.
What was Tony Hallman going to say other than "Gentlemen, start your engines"? And there was a big argument. Well, you know how tradition is at the Indy 500.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
You change one little thing.
Sure.
4,000 of us go crazy.
Yeah, right,
I mean, when
right.
they put the starting stand up,
Yeah,
I was
right.
like,
Yeah.
what's wrong with standing on a track and waving? Well, he's going to get killed someday.
He's going to die.
Yeah, but
that's tradition. That's tradition.
tradition. So the Sid arranged for a guy, an announcer on the crew, to help Mr. Hallman every year prepare for that.
Okay.
And they'd come in our office, which was under the old Tower Terrace, and the two of them would go back in there. The announcer's name was Luke Walton. And they'd go back and they would practice. Now, part of the practice was he never wanted to say it the same way twice.
For his own
What-
sake, or to keep the crew on edge?
For history, for
Okay.
tradition.
Yeah, cool.
Right.
Okay.
So what they were really practicing, they had 3x5 cards, and they would write "Gentlemen, start your engines" on with different emphasis, and they'd practice all these difference. They finally come to one. I mean, it was a lengthy process.
That's the whole, okay.
And you'd be outside there, and you'd hear them in there, "Gentlemen, start your engine." Oh, no, we don't like
that's
that.
no good.
"Gentlemen, start your engines."
You're like an optometrist. A or
Well,
B?
when we got down to the Janet part, nothing there. We
Yeah.
couldn't find them at all.
Interesting.
And so he finally stepped up with no one having a clue what he's going to say other than Luke. And he said, in company with the first lady to drive the Indianapolis 500, "Gentlemen, start your engines." So he kept that
okay.
phrasing
Still-
together.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. That was, I think that was AJ Foyt's 4th win.
77.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a huge day.
So big,
you know,
big day.
I had a lot of stories. There was, you know, AJ and John Connick were fighting the whole race, and John Connick came flying off of 4, and the crankshaft broke.
Yeah.
And took him out. They would have been contenders right to the finish. But
Yeah.
once that happened, it was pretty much AJ's day. But still, and suddenly realized this is history.
Yeah, right.
In fact, first couple of times I said it, I kind of stumbled. I couldn't figure out how to say 4th Indy 500
Yeah.
smoothly.
Right.
Right. It's not a common phrase.
Yeah. Are you a drinking man at all?
I'm the chair of a guild that is called Men of the Malt.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
And,
And you're not drinking.
There are 18 of us because there are 18 drinks in a scotch bottle, which also explains why golf courses are 18 holes.
Yep.
Okay. There we go.
So what we do is we all get together and pick some ridiculously expensive scotch, and then we all chip in and buy it,
Nice.
and we're all getting one shot.
Yeah.
And it's just a nice evening. We do it about 4 times a year, but it's really
Nice.
quite enjoyable.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I was looking through your Twitter account and doing a little stalking on it. He starts laughing. Of course, the timeline equals out, but I wouldn't have thought about it if I didn't see the photo. You got to interview Jimmy Clark.
Yeah. This was when I was doing radio stations.
Yeah.
In fact, I didn't even have a credential that would get me in the pits. In fact, if you look at the picture, I had a pin-on name tag credential.
Right.
I didn't have one of the badges. But obviously, I'm an enormous hero of his.
Yeah.
And I took a shot, and he was extremely cordial.
Yeah.
It was really great. We just stood there, and we talked, And a photographer saw it and took the picture and handed it to me later. And that was very early in the month, so we were out at Raceway Park on a demonstration. I forget who was putting it on, the 2.5-mile road course that's west of the Speedway. And Jimmy was there to drive one of the cars and take media around. And one, I had the picture, and two, I got the ride. So if you look very carefully at it, you'll see an autograph
I saw
in the
that.
corner of it. And I showed that to Frank Keedy when he won, and he was like, oh, my God.
Yeah, tried to buy it off you probably.
Right, yeah.
Well, we talked to him. He was telling us he has oil. He has like a bag of oil from Jim Clark's.
Does he really?
One of his cars.
I believe that.
Yeah.
And I think he said
we've sold like 400 gallons of that.
yeah, it's a good racket. In your history of the 500, is there a character that stands out as somebody that you like couldn't believe you got to meet him and he lived up to the hype? Somebody that you're like you wouldn't have believed.
Well, if you use the name character,
yeah,
then that's Bobby Unser.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, all right, finally.
Yes.
It's starting now.
Here we go.
Okay.
Who I call Uncle Bobby, and he calls me Father.
Okay.
And that started when he was driving, and then I recommended him to be a color analyst, and so we worked both radio and television together, and that boy's a piece of work. I'll give you a quick example. There are a million of these examples.
We have a few.
Yeah.
This multiple 13-time winner of the Pikes Peak Hill Climb is afraid of heights.
Interesting. Okay.
And so one year at Long Beach, knowing that and wanting to torment Bobby at every possibility, our booth was actually a scissors lift
Right.
across the road from the pit entrance.
Yeah.
They finally got proper broadcast booths when we were going a little later on. When we went more live, we were taping the Long Beach for a couple of years, tape delay, but still. So it was a 75-foot scissors lift. And, of course, I learned how to operate it right away. And it's time to go in the air.
Yeah.
And we get up in it, and
up you go.
hit it, and then he's like, oh, Father, we're good. We're good here. We're like 8 feet off the ground. No, it's not good enough, Bobby. And I keep cranking it, and I got it up to its full 75 feet because there were also cables that supported it up there.
Okay.
Right.
And he is in the corner, and he's, oh, Father, we can't do this. I can't work up here. He was so funny. But he got even with me because during the race, I'm leaning over the rail. I don't know if it was to torment him or if I was looking at something down the pits, but here comes Fittipaldi out of the hairpin and blows his engine. Yeah. And I get a face full of hot oil over the face. And Bobby said, see?
Yeah. Serves you right.
But we did. The stories about Bobby go on and on and on. And what I admire most about Bobby is he is intellectually honest. That is to say, if he doesn't understand what you're explaining to him, he will pester you until he does.
Right.
And I
Rather
just think
than
that's
sort of
cool.
brush off like, I get it,
He
and have
doesn't
no
play
clue.
like, oh, yeah, I got that. No,
Right.
he will keep right. And I'm talking big deal people, big
Doesn't matter who it
engineers
is.
or, doesn't matter. Bobby's going to find out what that's all about.
Yeah.
He was so intellectually curious, and he's bright.
Yeah.
He's very, very bright. And he's cheap.
We've heard that.
He one time when he was trying to figure out aerodynamics on cars, he actually used what was basically a flow bench for heads and built little miniature wings and things and ran them through the... No, total BS. He wasn't going to get anything out of it at all.
Right.
There he was.
Trying. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned with Janet, there's, during the month of May, a lot of these guys would have kind of little apartment setups. Mm-hmm. We've heard that Bobby was infamous for having fun in those apartments. Do you have any recollection of that stuff?
Bobby didn't have an apartment.
Oh,
Yeah, that's
okay.
actually what
Yeah.
I think that's part of the rub.
So
He didn't have a place to go.
Well,
No, okay.
the story, was it Robin Miller that told us that?
Robin, yeah.
Yeah, Robin Miller told us a story about how he would go up to ladies in the grocery store with a frozen turkey and claim he didn't have an oven in his,
Based
hotel
on
room
that,
he was
based on
staying
your
in.
head sinking, that's true.
And he needed to cook the turkey.
He stayed in a Howard Johnson's out, I think, on High School Road.
Yeah.
And the place in his early day for parties was the Holiday Inn, which was across the street. It's destroyed years ago. And before that, down just east of the Speedway, east of the underpass, on the south side of 16th Street is this white brick, it's actually cinder block building that was at the time the White Front Bar and Grill. And that was the hangout for all the, and these now are, I'm talking, we're in the 60s now, and you know, that was when sex was safe and racing was dangerous, kind of thing.
Right.
And he had a reputation. There was going to be a fight there every night.
Good. As there should be.
Yeah.
He had a reputation for being able to whip his belt off and wrap it and smack somebody like in 2.5 seconds.
Sure.
And he had a great, you know, one of those Southwestern giant buckles with turquoise inlay that said Under and stuff on it. And you could end up with his name on the side of your face if you did it wrong.
Of those days, of those parties, was Unser the guy that was the last one standing at the end of the night, or who was the unsung hero of Indy parties?
Well, being the dignified man I am, I would certainly not.
But rumors,
I had understood as a reporter,
Correct.
attending as a
Right,
reporter.
just observational.
He was just working.
Yeah.
He could hold his own. What was even more interesting to me was he would arrive at the track the next day, and it was the old track hospital, and he would have him run a liter of lactated ringers, IV, to bring his moisture back, or normal saline, I think.
Right.
Normal saline.
Yeah.
And get a vitamin B12 shot and sit there on oxygen for like 45 minutes. And then he'd go run 200-mile-an-hour laps.
Be the fastest guy out there, right?
I don't think he could pull that off today.
It's one way to race.
In television one year, Bobby had trouble with his on-camera opens. He didn't want to memorize them. He, wrote them, and he'd try reading cards. I said, Bobby, one, it doesn't look good. And two, the problem with this is live television, and something could change right in the middle of what you're saying, and you'd be caught. You wouldn't be able to move on it. Oh, I got to have it. So he came up with a system of taking manila file folders and taping several of them together and writing his open on that like a cue card. And he had the stage manager stand alongside the camera and hold the card up. And so it still ends up with Bobby like, I'm
Still
looking at
kind
the
of
camera, and
camera.
Bobby's looking
Yeah,
over here to
yeah.
the left.
Yeah.
But I wanted to break him of that, and I couldn't. He wouldn't stop, and he wouldn't stop. One day we're at Michigan, and we did the on-cameras up on the roof of the main grandstand at Michigan, which is way up there. And Bobby didn't like that. So we stayed back away from the edge the whole time, but we had, the Irish Hills as our backdrop and everything. So I worked it out with the stage manager, and we're standing on the roof getting ready to go, and Bobby never paid attention to anything that they were saying in his earphones. And so all of a sudden I said, "Come, Bobby, we're on. Come on, get up here. And he gets alongside me, and I start out, hi, Paul Page, we're here, da-da-da-da-da, and Bobby Unser, what do you think about this day? And he starts reading the cue cards. And on this prearrangement with the stage manager, we weren't on the air.
Yeah.
He let go of the cue cards, and the wind came across the top of that.
And off they go.
Poof. And Bobby's like, and he totally locks up.
Right.
Yeah.
So I turn around and say, see?
Yeah.
Right. He never did it after that.
Right. Yeah. It's not foolproof. So if Bobby Unser might have been let's say the lower.
I answered that based on your inquiry as a character.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
He was also one hell of a racing driver.
Well, no question there. But in terms of commentators, if he was, let's say, the lower end of the driver/commentator, who would be the best driver commentator you got to work with?
Tom Sneva was scary.
Okay. No.
Go
no.
on.
Come
Well,
on.
during the qualifying, he was talking about Gary Bentonhausen, and he ended up on live television with the phrase, Gary knows where to get a good lap dance anywhere in any town.
My boy.
How do you deal with
My
that?
boy.
Do you have Tom Sneva's email? Can we reach out to him? No, that's amazing.
A lot of times the trios, so to speak, are very common now in broadcast booths. Was there a favorite? I'm sure you've enjoyed all of them. Is there a favorite trio?
Well, the
of
fun
ones?
team was,
Yeah.
of course, Bobby and Sam Posey.
That's-
in our
that
early
was-
years.
that's
You
what
were
you're
going
known
for
for.
that.
That's
I
the
know.
staple.
I
Yeah,
knew
yeah.
that's where you were going. That was fun. What people, on the air, they were constantly in conflict with one another.
Right. Yeah.
Privately, they were great. One
Right.
time, it's a 14-hour flight from L.A. to Sydney, Australia. And Bobby and Sam are sitting together, and I go to sleep, and when I wake up, they're still talking. They talked
No
14
kidding.
straight hours
Yeah.
together. They're buddies. But of course, whole different approach out of two of them when you got on the air.
Yeah.
So what would happen is Sam would make a statement, and Bobby would say, "Well, Sam, it's not exactly correct," and he'd start talking.
Oh,
he'd
I
keep
remember
going,
this, yeah.
and he would eventually, in most cases, wind his way around so he actually said what Sam said, but now he'd said
But
it,
it's
so it's
my
right.
idea. Yeah.
And then one year with Sam had the same issue. He's pretty intellectual guy and
Right.
a great writer, awesome writer. So he would write cards out with things that he wanted to discuss, and he'd write them as little stories. And the end result of that was he often was looking there and not up at the monitor or at the race. And so sometimes I'd take him unawares by accident. I realized he had his
What are
head
you
down
doing?
somewhere else. So one year with him, he walks into the booth, and he probably had a 3-inch high stack of cards. And we're getting close to on the air and everything, and we've done the on-cameras. We're in a break, and I reach over and I pick that stack up, and I throw it across the room. And Sam gave me a good look, but he also gave me the greatest show of
That he
his
was on.
life.
Yeah, right.
He knew all the stuff in there. He didn't need that. By reading it, he stymied himself reading it.
Yeah.
But he knew what was there, so off he went.
Well, I was going to say, is you say he was a great writer, which I would agree with, but it was almost funny for a lot of us at home because he'd be so caught up in the metaphor or the prose of what he was saying that at some point, like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Did you guys give him grief in the booth for that?
Did we what?
Did you ever give him grief for
Give
any of that?
Sam grief?
Okay, I guess.
That would be wrong. Of course we did. And he took it. He's a great guy. He took it well. He took it very well.
took
it well.
Agreed.
Somebody that's definitely on our radar that we'd love to have on the show at some point. Bob Jenkins.
Mm-hmm. When I was working at WIBC, he worked news at a station called WIRE, who no longer exists. And we were both on the night shift. So we'd get bored and we'd call each other because we were both race fans. We were talking to each other all the time. And we were totally unethical because if I'd run out and get a story, which I could do, I could leave the station and go get a story.
Okay.
Come in.
Yeah.
I'd put it on the air once for me and then call Bob and say,
Hey.
here's a little info.
Right.
So we were always buddies. And in 1979, I got a call from a bunch of guys who had left NBC. I was working at NBC. And they said, "You're a pretty good producer, and we'd like you to produce some stuff for us." I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Well, we're all working for ESPN." It wasn't on the air yet, and to tell you the truth, I didn't know who they were.
Right. Yeah, the idea of it all.
So,
sports.
but yeah, this in a week we're going to shoot the race at Eldora Sprint Cars, and we're going to send you a truck from the Christian Broadcasting Network, and which limited conversation in the truck to some degree. And they said, "Buyer, you also need to hire the announcers." So I hired Bob, and at first he had no idea what was going on.
Right.
I knew he could do it, but he had no idea. And at one point, to show you my tremendous broadcast acumen, he says, "ESPN, what are we talking? What are we doing here?" And I think the fee was like $750 or something. I said, "Bob, ESPN is going to be a 24-hour sports network. It's not going to last. Just take the money." How'd I do?
Yeah, right. Yeah, you nailed that one. Yeah.
So, what is the prep work like to cover the Nathan's hot dog eating contest?
What? I don't know who does that.
Okay, fair enough.
Oh, that's all we heard.
According to the very reliable Wikipedia
And YouTube.
and YouTube and the Nathan's Hot Dog website.
Right.
So tell us about the Nathan's Hot Dog.
First off, how do you get
contest.
that?
How do you get that?
Where's
gig?
that phone call come
Yeah,
from?
you know, you had to audition. There's quite a list of guys who wanted it.
And you were fourth, and they said,
I get a call from my management, my senior management at ESPN, and they said, "We got an event. It's the hot dog eating contest." And I had a reputation. It's why I got so much international travel, for making light of stuff and turning it into fun.
Yeah.
When I was with NBC, I did the Rubik's Cube World Championship in Budapest and
Wow, that's a
sumo
thing.
wrestling.
okay, we're going back to that.
Yeah.
The one that never made it on the air was the Arcata to Ferndale kinetic sculpture race. And it's up in Humboldt County, California. And
Why?
California, that I even remember it is.
I can't believe it.
So he called and he said, "This, we're going to do this event. Nathan's people are buying into it. They want to do it." I said, "Okay, it'll be fun." Plus, it got me into New York. And a live event, generally speaking, is you go in, let's say it's a Sunday event. You travel on Thursday, and you have production meeting on Friday and on Saturday, and then on Sunday you do the event. Well, one of the good things was it was a live event, so we didn't have to go back and do voiceover later. And it was an hour. And so I went, and it was really funny. I got 2 Broadway plays in. Yeah.
Vacation was great.
This is somewhere between broadcasting and vacation.
The people were really nice. The thing was actually thought up by a bunch of guys two brothers, George and Rick Shea, who were trying to develop Coney Island into something better than the dump that it was. And they thought to call attention to Coney Island with this contest. And it was more fun. You couldn't prepare for it. I mean, the names, I knew their stats.
Yeah.
What else are you going to do?
You're not doing
you got their stats. This guy 4 times was the jalapeno eating champion.
Right, so you got to know that.
But you're not doing like the Friday pit walk where you're going from stall to stall to learn these guys. Okay.
Like anything new this weekend?
Yeah. How's the setup?
I got diabetes.
We did one, and it got a great rating.
Okay.
So they said,
So now you're stuck with
Let's keep that up.
Okay.
And I think I just did my 15th year last year.
Bless you.
I'm not sure about that, but I think it was that.
That's amazing.
Okay. And it's what's really amazing about it is its rating is through the ceiling.
Yeah.
It outrates Wimbledon.
Yes.
Yeah.
America.
In fact, at one point, Wimbledon was so angry when they were renegotiating a contract that they made us not do it live because it was in the middle of Wimbledon.
Right.
And we had to tape it as live and do it later in the day so we didn't interrupt
the precious.
Yeah,
okay.
so.
You know what I'm thinking?
Here we go.
And we'll definitely bring you in on this with us, Paul, is that it is a contest that is who can eat the fastest, which is a race.
Yep. Yeah.
And they're eating.
So they're racers.
So we need to interview one of these guys or girls that wins the hot dog eating contest.
They will break our budget.
Absolutely.
But we'll take them to burgers.
Yeah.
But if their ratings are that good,
yeah, we
there's
need
an
to
audience.
crossover.
Very first year in doing that, though, it was kind of fun because when they started the event, they said, "Gentlemen," because I was there.
Yeah.
"Gentlemen, start your enzymes."
Yes. Let you get a couple bites in, but I'm not even being funny here. What do they do to prepare? Because I've heard there's all kinds of elaborate ways to eat to stretch your stomach out and chewing gum to strengthen your jaw. And
all of those things. They'd get 5 pieces of gum and chew it.
Right.
The big thing they have to do is the gag reflex is voluntary.
Okay.
You can overcome it. You have to train yourself to overcome it. So they do that.
And how do
they
do
have
that?
all these crazy little methods of supposedly eating it.
Asking for a friend. How do you
stop?
How do you stop the
This
gag
is my
reflex?
career you're laughing at here.
I'm laughing at Sean.
Trying to figure out how to be a professional here.
Oh my God.
We're talking about a hot dog contest, and you're trying to be a pro.
I'm just trying to eat a sandwich.
How does one just subside the gag reflex?
Please enlighten Sean.
Decide.
How does it how do you prevent the gag reflex from kicking in?
Oh, I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
Don't want to know.
Nope, not my
I know that one year, when I think the record was 72 dogs and buns, the sports science people decided to do something.
Right.
Oh, to actually figure it out. Okay.
So they built the mannequin, and with a flexible plastic stomach.
Of course.
As you do.
And they started pumping in, and
This is
getting
science.
bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it exploded. So we used the piece, but we cut the explosion out. And then another year, we put the record in a big plastic bag and just let it sit there, and I'm like, so gross. I don't watch the monitor. I just watch the dog count. I'll look up occasionally.
Trade secrets.
No, that's a
Cold water
it's
probably
a fun
helps.
event, and they are really nice people.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Really nice people.
And rumor has it your lovely wife went once
Or was forced.
and never again.
That's true,
Okay.
because I got her a VIP ticket.
Which lets you sit.
It put her right up in the front in what they call the spray zone.
Right.
Huh.
Right.
It's good
Yeah.
dinner
Didn't have to
conversation.
worry about that again.
Yeah. Yeah. One and done. Okay, so new for this year, we're kind of something inappropriate as we're talking politics at the dinner table.
Okay.
Last presidential election, who'd you vote for?
Well, I mean, there was a lot of things you had to consider.
Sure.
A lot of things you had to look at.
Yeah.
A lot of different ideologies and personalities. And after really, really thinking it over, Johnny Rock Page is like the guy. I mean, I think he's a relative.
Possibly.
So there you go. Johnny Rock Page, that's it. But,
Fair enough.
it's kind of between you and I.
Okay, yeah.
You guys can't tell anybody.
We won't
let this
tell
happen.
anybody at all.
Right.
Yeah.
So, 2004, your open wheel days kind of stopped for a variety of reasons, and 2 years later you find yourself in the NHRA paddock.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I set a significant record in 2004.
Go for it.
I was on the air, live network television, ABC, for 8 hours and 20 minutes for a single ongoing event that is the record for network television being on the air. One little group covering one little.
Wow.
You can say golf and everything. Nobody's on constant.
Yeah.
You
We're
on
there,
constant.
baby.
Wow.
Never wanted to race to end so bad in my life.
Right. Please.
And then we didn't know it. We're doing our off-the-air thing pretty quick because we were so over time.
Yeah.
And we come out of the booth and realize there's evacuating the grandstands. There's a tornado coming.
This is for the 500.
And so I head back for our compound where we have a traditional steak dinner after the Indy 500 every year. And along the way, here comes Gary Gerald, one of the pit guys, and we're walking back together. We go in the tent, and there's nobody there. They've evacuated. So we go over and start looking at the steam trays, and steaks are all here.
Well.
So we sat down in this tent with tornado warnings and had dinner. And the only thing that actually drove us out of there was the water finally got up above our ankles.
Oh, wow.
We're going to the car. We're done. Indy 500's over.
Eating steak, the tent's falling down. That's a good way to go.
But you had a whole lifetime of kind of really worshiping the speedway, and then the conversion to drag racing. I mean, if you don't follow it, it seems like that's quite a bit to absorb to really sort of be an insider if you're going to host it.
Mm-hmm.
How much of a transition was that for you?
Well, I had actually done some drag racing in the early 80s.
Oh.
On a thing called American Sports Cavalcade, which ran on the Nashville Network.
Okay.
That was like my favorite show as a kid. It's on my list of
Really?
questions. Oh, yeah.
Well, I did, along with Steve Evans,
Yeah.
did a bunch of drag races.
Yeah.
So I always was a fan of drag racing. One of my first drag races was coming back to Indy from the Ontario 500, which is run on a Sunday in California, to bring an award from the Auto Racing Writers and Broadcasters Association to Big Daddy.
Yeah.
And but I'd always kind of followed it. I always thought drag racing was kind of cool.
Yeah.
So coming back into it was a lot of fun. And what I especially liked about drag racing is they don't have huge sponsors. They have great sponsors, but not mega sponsors.
Yeah.
They don't have to talk to an engineer for 6 hours after every run.
Right.
So it's a really open society. So much so that, like, at the end of the day, they'll drag out the barbecue grills and start doing hamburgers and everything.
Right.
Really, really great group of people, and I like doing those races. I really enjoyed that. And the guy I worked with, Mike Dunn, he was just super. I mean, he's probably a better journalist as a former drag racing champion than he was a drag racer. I mean, he was really, really good, and he was just awesome at doing technical explanations. The other thing is, too, they remind me in a lot of ways of my early days with Indycar, Champ Car, whatever you're talking about, and that at the end of the day, they all get together as a group, they have a good time.
Yeah.
They all like each other for the most part.
Right.
occasional fist fight, but that makes it fun.
Oh, that's good TV.
And it was a pleasure to get away from that intense mega sponsor. We can't talk to you because we got to be in with our engineer for the next 4 hours. Something that I just beat my son up all the time for. But it's necessary in IndyCar today.
Yeah, you got to know. Yep.
So you've been at the Speedway, you've been in NHRA since early 70s. A guy like Bobby Unser, we know that he's a character. That's very well documented. You spend 5 minutes with Robert Miller. Who is the greatest character that we don't know about? Either because their on-screen persona is different, or they're just not a guy that's public.
Well, there's a comedy trio of Herta and Kanan. Well, not those two.
Right.
Are practical jokers.
Yeah.
And they
Kanan's pretty famous for it, but Herta not so much.
Right.
Well, they used to torment Dan Weldon all the time, all the time. And Dan was such a nice, straightforward human being, and every chance they get, and racers, as you know, are practical jokers. Anything we can do to have a little fun, especially at somebody's expense, we're going to do it. Jack Arute at the Long Beach Grand Prix, the celebrity race, walked up to my car just before the start and had a raccoon's tail that he lifted the trunk, stuck it in hanging out the back, and walked away. That's really embarrassing, Jack. What are you doing?
That's cool.
So let's talk about the cavalcade, because that was like the coolest show ever, because it to me was just TNN. I mean, it was basically like everything from
anything.
Yeah.
And the broadcast team was me, Brock Yates, who's like a brilliant human being, has passed away now, and Steve Evans, who's passed away. But we had more fun.
Yeah.
I mean, we covered the Sportsman Park swamp buggy races.
Exactly. That's what I was going to talk about, swamp buggies.
Yeah, and they threw me in the sippy hole. We just had fun with it. And Brock insisted that every Saturday night, we go to a movie.
Oh, that's so cool.
And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We need to stick to that.
Yeah, we should. We were supposed to do that last night. We didn't. Was there an event that you guys ever had to cover on that show that you were like, I'm an Emmy award-winning broadcaster, guys. How do I make this sound legitimate?
Well, with the swamp buggies, I wasn't yet. I was with NBC and moonlighting.
Yeah.
Now,
because some of the swamp buggies,
it was. See, I personally believe that Steve Evans was one of the best racing announcers I'd ever met. He was awesome. He could turn phrases so well, and he understood everything, not just drag racing, because we did a lot of Formula Atlantics. We were up at Lime Rock, stuff like that. And you got Brock there, how many books has he written? How many really great books? How many things has he thought up and created? And so I'm sitting here with two verbal geniuses, and I'm just struggling to stay with them. So I got to go to the practical joke side,
Right.
Not to take a dark turn, but I think of races like Fontana, 1999, when Greg has his accident early on, and you guys know it's bad. You probably know how bad it is before it's public, but the race continues on. Is there doesn't have to be that race necessarily, but was there a race that you remember as just sort of being particularly rough to go through?
Well, you mentioned one of the worst.
Yeah.
And that was a problem because it was an in-race fatality.
Yeah.
And
because like that one, did you guys, it's 2/3 into the race when they announced what had happened, but I don't know if you guys knew earlier.
That was the whole thing was monstrous.
Yeah.
I'd been talking to Greg in the pits that morning.
Yeah.
And he'd crashed his scooter the evening before, and had his butt all Novocaine'd up.
Yeah.
And we're laughing about it. He was a super guy and dedicated. And God knows where his name would fit in the whole history of motorsports. The accident, of course, happened early in the race. Buzz Calkins actually had a similar accident earlier in the race, but he didn't have the same dynamics of the accident. When I saw when I saw that accident, we have a control panel that your headset plugs into in the booth. And part of it is you adjust either side of your earphones, because on one side is where the producer is going to talk to you. And you have a cough button, but you also have an intercom button that takes your mic off the air and goes into the producer's ear. As I see the accident, I hit that button and I said, no replays, because there was no doubt in my mind I was looking at a fatal accident. And I'd seen, unfortunately, a lot of them, too many of them. Then Indycar took, well, I guess it was car 10.
Yeah.
It took forever. And really pissed us off.
Right.
Because we knew it.
Yeah.
We knew it through observation.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we knew it, cameramen reporting in, seeing this and that. There's
helicopter and all that,
but
yeah.
From the instant he rolled and hit that wall, I knew what we were dealing with. And CART, for some reason, delayed it, and they had all kinds of excuses. We got to notify his family. Well, we all know full well his father was always at the track and all that. And then they tell us from race control, which was right next door to our booth, the guy walks over and says, here's what we're going to do. We're going to throw a caution, and then we're going to lower the flags at the start line to half-mast, and then we'll make the announcement. And I'm like, really? That's really what you think you want to do? You want to exploit this beautiful human being's death? Well, they were going to throw the yellow, and then they didn't. And then they tried to take the flags down, and that didn't work. And so finally, our people just pestered him and said, look, this is real. We know this happened. You're going to have to address it. So they did. But it was horrible, and what made it even worse for me was the banquet that was a season-ending race was the next night, and Parker and I had to alternate giving the awards out, and I had Greg. I had to announce that, and I love the guy. I mean, I first saw Greg Moore in Nazareth, Pennsylvania. He was nothing. He was racing small classes and everything, but I watched him stand outside the ropes at Penske Racing asking to be able to talk to Roger or someone. He stood there, I'll bet, at least 7 hours. And finally, I think they just took pity on him. And then they realized how really good he was. And he was fantastic. We also had Krosnoff, and that was in Toronto. And they tried to hide that one, too. In fact, they were going to try to make the announcement after we went off the air because they didn't want to admit to a fatality. Well, one, you look at it. Again, I mean, and so we kind of deliberately stayed on the air just because they were playing with it.
Yeah.
We couldn't announce it because it wasn't official. But
is there a protocol for that at all, like in place because of these, because of the critical nature of these races?
Yeah, there is and there isn't. Our protocol is, as television, if you even suspect, you jump out to wide shots. And if it's really ugly, then maybe you're going to look somewhere else. The Weldon accident where they were looking at every car on the track other than his. And again, you knew that was, though they did something that day that really upset me. I was doing drag race. And my son's kind of hit me with text letting me know what's going on. But of course, and I always had a monitor down on the floor by my right knee that I could watch the IndyCar race because drag racing, it wasn't constant.
And there's
we
a lot of
recorded
breaks.
10 minutes and we sat.
Right.
And so I knew from what I saw, I knew from what I'm being told. And they actually had a news conference to announce a death. But worse yet, the network, for some reason, and the announcer who was handling it came on and said, no doubt at direction from his superior, said, well, since this is going to be all over the news, we're going to go run the replays. And so, okay, you're a member of that community. Is that really what you want to do? You really want to do it? Well, they did it. I was furious.
Right.
But I had no authority.
Right.
Yeah,
well, but so to that,
that Page is over in the corner going nuts again.
right. Well, so to that end, if you were in the booth in Vegas, if they had said we're gonna do a bunch of replay analysis of this, would you have just
I would have
outright
said no.
refused? Yeah. Yeah.
We were at Lauschwitz ring.
Oh, right. Yeah.
At Dresden.
Yeah.
Right after 9/11.
Yep.
In fact, it was interesting because I had traveled early, actually, to Scotland, and take a little free time riding a train. And when 9/11 happened, we couldn't get most of our crew over there because the international flights were shut down. And so we got in there, and some of the meetings that Indycar was having, again, I guess still CART at that time, were intense. In fact, at least one major mechanic walked out of one because, again, they were going to try to make a show at the race that Saturday. And we had the added misfortune of being the first live event on ESPN because they rode ABC News for the week. So you had the Zanardi accident. And, I mean, when they put him in the helicopter and pulled him back, I wasn't sure about that accident because of the nature of the medical activity going on around it. And when I saw Trammell whip his belt off and make the tourniquet for his legs. But then Father Phil was standing out inside in front of the helicopter blessing it, and they had put him in. They had to take him back out because he arrested. Well, when it was over, because there were replays, we were live. We did. They actually called me and they said, "We want you to cut 3 closes. One that he's seriously injured and under treatment. One that he is apparently going to be okay, and another that he's passed away." Absolutely not. I'm not doing it. I expected to get fired, but they didn't. Too much else going on. But that they even asked that question offended me. Again, I don't, they don't realize this is your family.
Yeah. You're in this community. Yeah. All right. Well, let's
Got something
get out of
fun?
heavy stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, we do.
We do.
We really do. Let's do the pass along.
Yeah,
first.
so we do a segment where we ask every guest beforehand to ask a question of the next guest and pass it along.
Mm-hmm.
So we met yesterday with none other than Mr. He's
kinda
speaking
known.
of politics.
He's kinda known.
He's a mayor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's a mayor of a town up in Canada called Hinchtown.
Yeah. I think I got a traffic ticket there.
That's very possible.
Yeah, the cops there, they're just the
pretty
rudest.
brutal.
Yeah.
But he had a question for you.
Yeah, his question was, if you were the radio guy at the Speedway for the 500, because a lot of them have the catchphrases, and he's what is it?
He was using Tom Carnegie's example,
Right.
and he's on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you do it better than I do.
Yeah.
If you were the radio guy at the Speedway, what would your catchphrase be?
I don't think I never worked on having one. I never worked on a signature.
Yeah.
I got most of the teasing because on like every accident I'd say "whoa,"
Yeah, right.
Which was
right.
probably just your natural
so
response.
I think that
Yeah.
became my
Right.
deal.
Yeah.
Right.
I always tried to change things up, and I always tried to end the race, in a nice, dignified tone.
Yeah.
At the 500.
Right.
Which is what Sid did. I was just parodying Sid.
Yeah, he was known for having like always a serious thought quote or some
the end of the
poetry
race,
that he would
yeah.
read. Do you have one that stands out as like your favorite one that he said?
And one that I used. I did it for a couple of years, and then people are saying that's hokey, and they talked me out of it. But there is a quote that he used. I don't know if I can do the whole thing, but basically and he would dedicate it to the driver. And by the way, he had several things available based on who the winner was.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I think one was, if you think you're beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you'd like to win but think you can't, it's almost a cinch that you won't. Because out in the world we find life's battles don't go to the stronger man. And then there's a couple sentences that I can't remember. But the final line is, they go to the man who thinks he can.
Okay.
And I always thought that was appropriate for race drivers.
Sunday
It's Sunday lunchtime.
lunch is
Sam Schmidt.
Sam Schmidt.
Yeah.
That's right. So if you could ever ask Sam Schmidt any question that maybe you could hide behind us on, or you always wanted to ask him but you never had the chance to, what would it be?
You want it serious or?
It can be
It can
whatever
be
you want. We've had
anything.
a very
Yeah.
large scope of questions.
This is a fun and game show that sometimes gets serious.
I would love to know how Sam accomplished what he has. He's in a devastating accident. He was a great guy. We all loved him then as a driver. He's in this devastating accident. A lot of us are convinced that's it. We're not going to see Sam again. And yet he bullies his way back. He works all of the time. He's pleasant all of the time. Anytime I see him, you come up and you pat him on the shoulder and everything. He's smiling. He's got something to say. I want to know where he got the personal courage to do that. Because that, to me, is a remarkable human feat.
Can't argue with that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
All right, I'm sure you guys got to get out of here, but we do have one, probably the most important question.
Yeah, we really have to get into something that's been a bit of a thing for us for a while now.
It's. I know we've gotten into some dark times, but you were also a prominent role in a documentary known as Driven.
I don't remember that. And if you look to the credits, you will not find my name.
Wait, is that true?
That's true.
No. I didn't catch
I'll
it.
tell you why.
Okay, yes, please.
Yeah, we need all of it.
They win our next bit.
They did Driven.
Yeah.
And the crews were with us off and on all year.
Right.
That was kind of fun, having big movie crews around.
Yeah. And they shot at, almost every track, as I remember.
Yeah, they did.
They were, yeah.
And they actually taught us a new way to do winter circle. I think they did it at the racetrack, the former horse track up in Chicago, in Hawthorne.
Okay.
Where they were shooting like what was going to be the final big victory scene.
Yeah.
And so they got all of these confetti cannons and stuff like that, daytime fireworks that nobody had ever used.
Oh, okay.
So after that, everybody started using
now
that
it's
stuff because
everywhere.
it looks so cool.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
That's funny. Driven actually gave something back.
Yeah. Yes, it
So at Long Beach, they had a private premiere showing of Driven.
did. Yes.
It apparently, I didn't go, but it was apparently
Too bad.
so horrible that they pulled it back to re-edit and redo.
Like a sneak preview kind of thing that they did.
That was a sneak
wasn't the
preview.
premiere.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Normally they have those. The writers write nice things,
right.
and then
They do a focus
They'd
group
make a
and
good
that's it.
movie.
Yeah.
Right.
So when they decided to do that, I got a call, and they wanted me to come in and put some narrations into it and do voiceover. I did the voice for the handsome guys in the booth for one of them. It was
Naturally.
cool.
Yes. You played
But-
yourself.
And I wanted to meet Sly. I wanted to meet Rennie Harlan, who was the director.
Yeah, absolutely.
His wife, I think, was Gina Davis at the time, and I
Yeah.
definitely wanted to meet her. So we go to Hollywood, and they start showing me this thing and what they've taken out, and that now they want my opinion. What do you think?
And they're
of
in the
it?
room.
And I'm kind of like, I'm not a consultant.
Right.
Yeah, right.
That's
Pay me first. Yeah.
But they had such horrible things in it.
Yeah.
They had one car. First of all, they have two cars parked in front of a building at the gala starting the season, and the two adversarial guys run out, jump into those two cars, start them with a key, and go racing through Chicago.
Fully aware.
We've seen that happen so many times.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dixon and Canaan.
Yeah.
But in it that they took out, and I was amazed at some of their abilities to do these things. There was one where a car flips into a pond,
Yeah.
and what you saw was the tamed down version.
Oh.
That was a nuclear explosion.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was.
Of the explosion of methanol.
Yeah,
Which had fire.
The fire
that
of
you could
methanol in a
see
lake.
In a lake, which
They
is
had
made of
a
water.
shot
Yeah.
that they shot at Detroit, and this was the director getting himself into the film. They created a playground that was outside
Oh, yeah.
the straightaway, and
There it
it
is.
is in
Yeah.
the film.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, we know.
And
Which one is he?
so he drops his kid there, and then there's an
he's wearing
accident.
a Herdez suit.
But the original footage had like an on-camera view of him plowing into the children.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Wait, no,
Hang
no,
on.
hold on.
Hang on. hang on. You just made Driven worse.
Yeah.
Well,
Also
and,
kind of better.
and Cart kind of got played in it because they couldn't do it at F1. It was too much money.
Yeah, right.
But Cart really wanted it and thought it was going to be a Cart movie.
Sure.
And as you see,
They
it
thought
was
it
a
would do, like-
quasi F1 movie.
Yeah.
So.
Wait, back to the murdering of children. They thought that was going to be a good scene?
Apparently they thought that
That's
was
good movie
exciting.
making. Yeah. Cars into children.
God.
So
I
we
didn't know it could get
revoiced
worse.
it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it debuted regular theater at when we were racing at Texas, at the Texas Motor Speedway, and so all the teams went to the movie, wanted to see it,
Yeah. And you were at this one.
You're never sure what's going to be in or out
Right.
when you do a movie
Yeah.
like that. So Parker and I are sitting in the back row, and the further it goes, the further down I'm sliding in my chair.
Yeah.
And Parker's just all over me.
Because he's not in it at all.
Because he's making fun of you.
Yeah, he is
Yeah.
really all over me on it.
Yeah.
And guys are turning around and looking at me, and all I want to know is when they run the credits,
Right.
that's Parker, see if my name's in there. See if my name, see, and I'm telling you, my name wasn't in the credits.
Yes.
So for Christmas that year, Parker got, I think they call it a 6-sheet, the poster that advertises the movie they put in front of the theaters. And it's the Driven official poster and everything.
right.
But Parker has hired an artist who has added featuring the voice of Paul Page.
Oh, my God. That is amazing. That is amazing.
There was a fun guy. Parker was...
Yeah. There was another documentary you were in. They've made a lot of documentaries over the years. There's March of the Penguins. There's Ants.
Yeah.
I once saw a documentary about a snail that made the Indianapolis 500.
Yeah.
I swear I heard your voice in that. I didn't check the credits to see if you were in it.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm in those
you're
credits.
in that one. Okay.
And I'm pretty proud of that. I thought
turbo.
that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I thought they really respected the Speedway.
Sure.
What amazed me, I didn't know, when you do animation, none of the characters are with each other at any time.
Yeah.
It's not like you're all sitting around a room
Right.
doing dialogue.
Right.
You come in one at a time. It's why animations work, because
Yeah,
you can bring
you
an
can edit.
actor in and he works a day and a half and he's
Yeah,
got
it's
his part of the
beautiful.
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I came in and they had all this script laid out. They didn't send me anything in advance. And, I'm at DreamWorks. They
Which
just
is
finished
pretty
Lincoln.
dang cool. Yeah.
Right.
And I'm in this giant voiceover studio where, because we're doing turbo, they had different signs of the scenes on easels all around. And I had this big easel platform that they put the script on. And the director sat right next to me. And they have a girl who comes in with your script on cardboard and sets it in front of you.
Right.
And then when you need the next one, she takes that one and puts the other
Right.
one.
Right.
This is
Easy
pretty
life.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
living
yeah,
large
yeah.
here. Yeah.
So it was really a lot of fun to do, and in doing it, not knowing you're laying these lines out. You have no idea where it's going to use. And a buddy of mine calls me. He'd seen a preview of it, and he said, "That was great the way you opened the show." And I'm like, "What?" I opened the show, because
Yeah.
it's a pretty big thing, because that's
Yeah.
the grabber moment.
Yeah.
For like a day's worth of work.
And when I saw it, I thought, this is so neat. And they were so accurate with animations. Like on one of the aerials where they swoop down toward the speedway, a buddy of mine camps in the campground every year at a certain place with a big camper.
Sure.
I can see that camper.
No way.
Oh, how cool.
And I think there are only two major, not even major, mistakes in it. Do you know of any?
Of the snail racing in the Indianapolis 500?
Well, they had
No.
the sun coming up in the north.
Yeah, I would not. Okay, that is a Paul Page moment.
And they had pole lights in the area behind the grandstands.
How are you with normal movies then? Like, that couldn't happen.
I'm pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Driven must have been really painful for you.
Well, and yeah, and I one of my things is catching continuity and all that.
Right. Yeah.
Being a producer, I'm like, oh,
I have that
God, look what
problem.
they
Yeah,
just did. And then I do have an avocation of being a tactical shooter. In fact, I have a Weldon
cool.
story for you.
Whoa.
Okay.
And so every time I see them go into a hold or a move, I taught that stuff for a while.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
And It's like, that is so wrong. But NCISLA, characters in there are the best trained
Oh, really?
in the use of handguns. So
Noted.
I kinda
Sure.
like that.
Noted.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
So
let's.
Weldon, every year for, I think 5 or 6 years, it started when Nigel came. And the FBI and I had a deal where I'd take them out to an FBI range, a selection of drivers, the week before the race when we had time to do it. You can't do it anymore. And the agents would take them through and let them shoot the weapons and teach them and all that, and I was part of that. And part of what I was helping with one day was the sniper. So he had a rifle down on the ground, and Tony Kanaan, he said, if I wasn't doing race driving, I'd be doing this. But Dan gets down, and we were using the standard police human silhouette target. And he looks through the scope, and he looks down, and he looks through the scope again. He kind of takes position, and he looks through the scope again, and he looks over at me and he says, Paul, I can't do this. To me, that's a human being out there.
Yeah.
I hope you appreciate that. I said, absolutely, get up and get away from the weapon.
Right.
I honor you for doing that. So, yeah.
Wow.
And that was him. Of course, he was a clothes hog, too.
And you have, and you've got Tony Kanaan there. Anybody else? Just the two of them?
No. It was a different group every year, but it'd be like maybe a couple of Penske guys. It'd be some of the,
So it's a
the
handful
top
of
guys.
drivers.
Yeah, it'd be like 5.
And he didn't have any sort of problem being comfortable enough as himself to say, I don't want to do this.
That's right.
Whereas a lot of people would go, no, I got to do this because I don't want to do it.
Yeah, no,
I
they'd go the macho route. They all
Exactly.
do. I mean,
Yeah.
in fact, part of what I was doing then we had to do was get the testosterone out of the guys so we could train them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. So
right.
you just actually pay
Yeah,
attention.
but he was so sensitive to that.
That's amazing. Yeah.
You don't know about the clothes hog, Weldon?
No, I mean,
like we know he was very kind of OCD about his wardrobe.
Yes.
Okay.
And this goes back to the practical jokes.
Yeah.
Somebody would go into his house when he wasn't looking, run in the bedroom and mess up all the clothes and throw the shoes out.
Yo, yes, good.
Drove me
good.
nuts.
I was going to say,
So you mentioned Kanaan. Who's the best shooter we don't know about?
all of them.
Yeah.
Johnny O'Connell.
What? You have no idea what you just did.
Really?
Yeah,
So instead of running over Dario, he could have just shot him from a
Could have
distance.
shot him right there. Yeah,
Yeah,
you didn't
right,
have
no
to.
problem.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to spell this out. We didn't prompt that. You said that all on your
no,
own.
I said that. Yeah. I think if
This
you
isn't gonna be a
remember,
running
he
joke.
had,
Yeah.
for one time he had Ruger as a sponsor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Johnny O'Connell. Okay.
That's not going to be a running joke, folks.
Yeah.
Just,
That's
a
real.
one-off.
That
That's a
was- he
real
actually
thing.
said that.
Yeah, interesting. He's a good buddy of ours. I just saw him
He's a
like 2
good
weeks
guy.
ago.
He's a good guy.
Oh, man, that's funny.
Cool.
All right, so you weren't in the credits for Driven, but they paid you for that? Hopefully?
You had to get SAG.
That was a story, too.
Oh.
Actually. I'm a member of the Screen Actors Guild.
Right.
Correct.
Hey, me too.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, and Sean.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
So,
famous over here.
are you SAG after? Or
SAG.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I filled out all the contracts, signed them, they took them, and about 2 months later,
This was
I get
for
this phone
Driven?
call from SAG.
Okay.
Saying, you performed in an unauthorized film.
Oh, no.
It's like, no, I didn't know that. What film? They tell me. I said, we signed the contracts. They said, well, did you take the copy? No. So it's like you're going to owe a $100,000 fine.
What?
The good news was the president of SAG at the time was Kent McCord. He's an enormous race fan, enormous
cool.
Indy 500 fan, and we knew each other personally.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so he got into it, and Driven ended up getting in all kinds of trouble with the unions.
Yeah.
They tried to say that they were operating under Canadian union law.
Right, 'cause it's in Toronto.
But since they shot so much in the United States,
Yeah,
that
right.
wasn't going
That
to
didn't
work.
fly.
And so finally I got let go from the fine, and I was exonerated. But
Okay.
I was saying, oh, no.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that why you weren't in the credits? Is it because of that?
No.
Okay.
I think I wasn't in the credits because they didn't want to bother. That was another animation pass they'd have to make. They
Right.
didn't want to do
And
it.
that was
Right.
it. Oh, wait,
Right.
wait.
They
Hold
were-
on. So it wasn't that you asked to be out. They literally just forgot to put you in the credits.
No, I
Driven.
think they did not want to redo the existing credits. They were just patching in whatever they could.
So your
and they were
voice
trying to save money.
your voice was like 11th hour. Let's patch this together.
Oh yeah.
Wow, so they were that bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you've got to understand
So
too.
I like that there's some that are like, should we put this asshole in? I don't know. It's like,
To my knowledge, that's the only movie at the time that went from theatrical to in-room hotel in a day.
Well, on that note, we have something for you to read.
yeah.
By the way, the book's coming out. Don't know when.
Should we do the
Wait,
what?
you have a book?
Oh, you
out?
have a
I'm
book?
working on a book.
Oh,
I've been working on it for
this
years.
is-
We've sold a bunch of Janet Guthrie books.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, then I ought to
And Lynn
finish
St.
it sometime.
Lynn St. James as well. Yeah, we get people that tweet us all the time about that.
I keep thinking, well, I've almost got it done, then something happens.
Right.
So it's not out. It's a work in progress,
It's
but there will
working
be a
it has
Paul
been
Page
for
book.
years.
Okay.
I do. There's one thing I'd like you guys to know, and I hope through the patter you get the impression. I'm totally passionate about motorsports, and especially IndyCar. It amazes me that I've been able to do what I've been able to do, and the for want of a better word, the love of the fans. It's so great because they come up to you, they talk, they want to talk about events and everything.
Yeah.
I've been so honored that fans actually would come up and care and want an autograph and stuff.
Right.
That's cool every time it happens. I love the fan base of motorsports. They're loyal, they're tough, but they're great to be around.
Well, they're tough because they care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, our closing question is usually about legacy, but you just kind of answered it.
Yeah.
As far as what would you want to leave behind? You didn't know anything about us when you showed up, and for people who never get this opportunity to sit with you, what is your takeaway, or what would you hope people took away from sitting down with us?
Well, certainly the love,
Yeah.
the dedication, that it is the overused a dream come true.
Yeah.
I'm living in Chicago as a kid. They got no idea the Indianapolis 500, but here I am. I'm subscribing to the Indianapolis Star on a monthly basis, and so I can follow the race. I never would have guessed that I'd be able to do what I did. I thought maybe I was a parts washer. I did the radios. I thought I was going to probably be a pit crew guy and had a side job in radio. And to be selected out like that, to be trained to do what I'm doing, and to have a nice understanding of what television is and how it really works, and I've been so lucky, so very, very lucky. I could have been a Formula Ford champion. It wasn't that funny.
But you can't let it go. Perfect. All right, let's get
On
out
that
of here.
note, yeah.
Yeah.
Continental's got the check.
I'm finished.
Who doesn't love Paul Page?
That guy's voice, I grew up on it. That was super cool to get to hang out with him.
And new restaurant, new bar, awesome stuff.
Yep. Obviously, nothing that we do is possible without great partners. Thanks again to Acura and, of course, Continental Tire. Send them a tweet. Let them know you love us and appreciate their support.
And of course, we're going to close out a song that once again is from a band that is undiscovered, which is code for willing to give us a license.
I love these guys.
Sure. And it's going to be Anna Volpe. That's ANNAVOLPE. That's V as in Victor and P as in Paul. You can find her at annavolpe.bandcamp.com. Here's a song of hers called Never Imagine.
I could never imagine to walk in his shoes. Each step so heavy, like the Monday morning blues. I can never imagine where his mind goes all day. Besides the thought of mouths to feed and that stack of bills to pay. You are a mystery to me. Your secrets are wrapped around the anchors of the sea. Father's guilt so strong, it's impossible to hide. I can never imagine the sacrifices he made. His baby girl always crying, only wishing that he stayed. You are mystery to me. Secrets are wrapped around the anchors of the sea.